Hey y'all. So hey, we're going live right now in about 13 minutes. I am hanging out here in the studio, just about to go ready, and you guys can watch this time lapse from a Milky Way rising over and over and over again out there on the North Shore. And I'll be back here to talk to those of you who are hanging out in the pre-show here in a moment. So hey ya Kent, hey ya AP Studios, and hey ya Chris. Back in about, I think I'll be back in about 6 minutes at the desk. And until then, enjoy the time lapse, getting ready. In fact, I don't want to show that video again. I need to pull some of my old videos out so that I can use them on pre-show videos. So enjoy just the time lapse for now. All right. I think it's good enough that you can stop watching this video. Let's turn this off and say, hey, welcome in, everybody. We're about to go live. What is it? 6 minutes away. 6 minutes away, and we will be live. Cats. Hey, Grant, welcome in. Hail the cats, he says. Aaron and the group, happy Wednesday. Welcome in. Hey, Ryan, welcome in. Welcome back when you get back as well. Hello, all, and Aaron, he says, glad to be here. Stoked to have Ryan always back. Hey, Kathy's here. Kathy, you weren't here last week. I noticed that was we felt that you were gone. We definitely felt the missing of you. Is that a good English sentence? No, I think a normal American would say we definitely. How would we say that? We definitely missed you. There was much missing of you. See, that's not a good typical English sentence. We definitely missed you is what most people would say, Kathy, but I said it 4 different ways wrong first. That's my classic. It's Dan Kaiser. Hey, been a while. Absolutely, man. Who else is on here that I haven't said hi to? Kent. I've already said hey to AP Studios, Chris Woodruff, and Kent earlier, but hey again, and Jerry Thompson. Man, I think that's the 5th time in Milky Way Wednesday, Jerry, that I've gone up and down the list and then said your name last, no matter where you were located on the chat. So I'm sorry about that. Swear I'm not doing that on purpose. Let me sit a little bit more upright. All right, so I haven't changed much of the studio for those of you hanging out here in the beginning. Hey, Chris Whiting, welcome in. We got both Chris's tonight. I need to do something bigger back there, but I think I need to wait till I sell some workshops and then try and bring up some different like shelving plans or something and then place my gear. It's going to be pretty obnoxious for me to take my gear and move it and take it out, and every time I go on an adventure I place it back in the bag or I put it back in the buckets that I carry, these little Tupperware buckets that I have. But it will look cool and easy, and a lot of times where you see me in a live session and I'm about to teach something, I go, oh, I want that tool or I want that example. Where's that? And I have to look, and I could actually have them behind me, man. Maybe just turn around and walk over there and grab them off the display case, maybe. And so I've also got another light right here to do some, like, right above my head, but I got to figure out some sort of hanging out over me to give me some rim light, as well as another strand of the LED lights that I plugged in before today's show because I had my kids for about 5 days and it was a blast having them, but I didn't do anything, no work really while I had them. And so I put them back home last night and I just tried to now, just barely, to see if that LED light would make this one even brighter if I plug in the longer strand, and it doesn't even light up. I can swap them out and they both light up, so it's not broken. It's the connection, the daisy chaining part that's broken. So I got to fix that. Faster's here. Wonder if you're driving in Faster. Hey, Jerry hadn't noticed that I was doing that, so that's good. Awesome. Kathy says, I did a 12-hour shift the day before and that day, so I fell asleep in the middle and woke about 4 hours later. That's why we didn't have Kathy. A very heavy, constant regular, I should say. AP says, felt your absence. Hey, thanks. And Bob Burkowski, meow, 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 meow. Oh, wait. That's what he's saying. AP is reminding me of how you could say the sentence that I was trying to say and couldn't really put together because I'm a little exhausted. A divorced dad is more like favorite uncle, and when you have your kids, it is just nonstop, especially in this little teeny apartment that I have right now. So, meow, 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 meow from Bob Burkowski. You and Grant. My cat's over there pushing all of my gear that I put on that table off of it. So they're obnoxious. Oh, we're about to go live. Woohoo! 2 more minutes, and we're going to have a pretty easy-going beginner lesson. I will be hanging up the teaching element early and hang out a little bit extra with those of you here, but not long. Hey, Faster's at home. Nihar's here. Hey, Nihar. Nahar? Nahar. I bet it's more pronounced like Nahar instead of Nihar. Nahar. All right, cool. We're about to get going. Let's chill with one last moment of Aaron King teaching this lesson yet again, and then we'll get into it. This is my Carson Lumi Loop. Right here above of this is a link, a quick text link, so you can go watch that focus video right now. But this is my #1 tip for getting great focus when I'm doing Milky Way photography. I take this because it has a plastic cup. It keeps it perfect distance from it. Flush right up against my LCD screen. And then I tweak it until I get the perfect focus. There's one more tip that I want to give you tonight, and it is one that if you have really good vision and you can see dots on the back of your LCD screen, this is going to be a quick tip to help you know, oh wow, okay, I can see the dots. I'm out of focus. Check out this clip of me and Escalante explaining it right there on scene. There's a way you can quickly see the difference on the back of your screen, even if you're not sure if you quite nailed the focus. Look at the difference. Can you notice the difference between them? This is just slightly out of focus, and yet I can tell immediately that I missed. And what is it that's giving it away? It's the brighter magnitude stars. Are there too many dots? If you start to see the stars as more than just a sea of specks of sand, but you start to see the brightest magnitude stars standing out, that's when you know you're out of focus. As I go more out of focus, watch how the brighter magnitude stars start to pop off the screen. And then here's even greater out of focus. It's so obvious when you look at it this way. If you're seeing a whole sea of stars, but there's standouts, if you have a lot of standouts, if you have just a few, look at this image. This one, you can see that there's definitely a few that stand out that are really bright. Antares, the planets, obvious ones, they're standing out. Back here, though, when I go over, there's a sea of them from corner to corner, middle, far left, far right. So if you have too many dots, that means the brightest magnitude stars are standing out. And when those brightest magnitude stars stand out, you know it's gone a little too far on the out of focus range. So try again. Awesome. And here we go. It's Wednesday, and that means it's Milky Way Wednesday time. So I hang out with you, beardless or bearded, and we talk Milky Way photographers. So welcome in, everybody. Welcome back again, another week talking about beginner stuff. Just beginner stuff. I'm Aaron King with Photog Adventures, and I'm trying out some new lighting. I think I like this one. I'm trying not to move my face too much because I like the shadow. I got a little bit of the Rembrandt lighting going on. Kind of the triangle here with the fill light here. It's oh, the triangle was over here. The fill light over here is kind of washing that out, but it's giving me a little bit of look. I need to move my desk in order to properly light this. I need to get the light over here, need to get the light over there. I have a lot more work to get this all ready to go. But outside of the lighting, a little bit more shopkeep, a little bit of a book behind the scenes information for you who follow me. Next week, I'm on a workshop. I will not be doing a live stream, but I'm back on August 31st. When I'm back August 31st, I'll do part 2 of this techniques video. And that part 2, I'll explain what's included in that one. But then I'll go out of this beginner stuff and I'll start tackling the questions that came in with the swag concert, the contest, not a concert. Swag meaning the stuff that Clarence Spencer hooked us up from Spencer's Cameras. We got those 2 shirts to give away to Jeff and Kathy. Kathy, you missed it. You actually won the shirt. And I'm going to give you, the answers to the questions that came through. If they take up a whole show, I'll separate them up. I'll have a couple for one show, maybe one for an entire show, and answer some listener viewer questions for September's live streams, with only 1 week that I'll be gone, maybe 2. I think I go to Rob Ryan's wedding without missing Milky Way Wednesdays, so I'll just be missing 1 week with the workshop next month. So let's get going into today's easygoing beginner lesson. And I just want to fix one thing right here. There we go. I got the right stuff showing on my screen over here. I should start off mentioning Alan's book. Grant wants me to do so right away. And I'm a Royce Bear fan, and his book is what I've been recommending for years. And I could see how the benefit would be to bring in Alan's book into your library. 1, you got to collect them all. 2, because Alan has some terrific diagrams and information. As I was looking at the book a few weeks ago when I was hanging out with Alan, it's fantastic. It looks beautiful. It's very big, and it's very worth it. If you're going to buy it from Alan, though, go to his website. He will pull in more money from the sale of the book through his website than if you go and get it through any other distributor. So go through his website as soon as you can and just order his book and support Alan Wallace. All right, here we go. Let's get rolling in with today's lesson. And we're going to be talking simply about techniques. Now, this is something that, let me get off of this pen. I'll go back here. This is something that's quite obvious. However, we need to mention it. In fact, let me turn off this. I can hear my audio is working. Let me get that speaker turned off because there's probably a little bit of echo, honestly. Hey, SM Wilkes is here from Northeast Georgia. Hey, and Phil's here as well, rainy North Carolina. Alan's book, Chris mentions that Alan's book looks like an encyclopedia. It does. It's huge, and it looks pretty fantastic. So I'm glad we have both Chris's here to get tonight. All right, so techniques. Which ones are we talking about? First, the single image capture. Then the panorama capture, the blend capture, and last, a technique that I've decided a term that I believe I want to coin it, but I'm going to have you all here tonight help me coin the phrase that we use for this technique. Now, techniques on part two. Part two is going to go into dual exposure panorama. It's going to go into stacking, and it's going to go into star tracking. So we're not talking about any of those techniques tonight, but we will hint a little bit about dual exposure. So here in this technique, here thinking and kind of squishing all photography of Milky Way photography into these different techniques, you may have noticed it if you follow places that are quite, I feel, a little strict, where you go and post on like the Milky Way Chasers group and you have to put that information, blended, single, pano, stacked. You got to use those kind of terms. We haven't really created a glossary of terms that everyone agrees on necessarily, but I myself adhere to the Royce Bair method of calling what a blend is versus a composite. A composite would be, I always like to bring a visual aid. Let me just grab an actual tripod. All right, actual tripod. And I will blitz over to my other screen so you can see me nice and large. A tripod. If your tripod stays in one place and you capture a picture, then you wait some time and capture a different way. Whether you are blending a different exposure of your sky or whether you are blending in a different time, like a blue hour plus a sky that's Milky Way later. Or if you're just basically going to, honestly, a panorama is a bit of a blend as you move your camera, but you don't actually move your tripod. It's not a composite when you bring a panorama together. It's only blending it together. So if you say capture a Milky Way and you have a subject that you've been lighting and you decide to turn that light off and then capture it again with you out there standing next to it, shining a flashlight or something. So now you're going to blend in you plus the sky plus the foreground capture if you had a different capture. Recently, myself, Rob, and John, we were down there at Factory Butte and we had to do a bit of a blend as we captured a longer exposure of Factory Butte, and then the Milky Way sky had a different exposure. So if we kept our tripod still, then it was a blend. If you move your tripod, then any type of moving is going to cause it to be a composite. So composite doesn't just count for here's the sky, adding it in to my foreground. So that blend term is helping. I am going to do the sky exposure, do the foreground exposure at different times and blend them together for my final composition, but I didn't move my tripod. In the situation where you do move your tripod, it's more of a composite. And in some cases, for instance, tonight's number 4, we will talk a little bit more about that. All right, so single image. I'm going to write some pros and cons, but everyone here in the chat, help me out with some pros and cons as well. Hey, Larry says, Larry, I'm doing Parks and Rec to you, Jerry, sorry. Jerry Thompson says, I ordered Alan's book a couple of weeks ago when he first announced it on his channel. Can't wait for it to arrive. Oh yeah, booyah. I'm getting mine as well. I got mine coming. Alan has it set up already. Laurenciu, hi. Hey, how's it going, man? All right, and Ryan says, blend. Nice euphemism. Did I say something? I'll have to go back and see the tape. All right, so maybe he's just calling blend the euphemism versus composite, and he's not making a joke. He might just be talking. You might be talking very seriously, Ryan, that using blend instead of composite is a euphemism for composite, but a softer toned one. Clarifying a few things, which is why number 4 has a need to get a name. All right, first, let's talk about single image Milky Way photography. That is how I began and how most of you probably are still maybe still using as your main way of capturing the Milky Way. For instance, if you go out and capture a Milky Way like this is a single image. There isn't a separate exposure for the foreground and the sky. There's nothing about stacking that's even happened in this image. All I have is a single frame of a capture over John and over a woman whose name I can't remember who just happened to be there at that night. They are all composites, Ryan says. Yes, Ryan's going more for the very purist look at this, which I believe I favor his side of the argument, but I like the term blend, and so I fully accepted blend. The Church of Milky Way Photography has many tenets, and one is blending is okay. So he's saying, correct, I'm being serious. Cool. So looking at this image, there's some pros and cons to doing a single image, and I'll just block this information while we do it. What's the pro of a single image capture? Well, I mean, obviously, it is just easy. It's so easy to do. Let me get a little bit less fat pen, and I'm going to rewrite that. Why is it easy? It's easy because when you bring your camera out there and get your exposure right, that is it. You've captured your sky, you captured your foreground all in one, and there you go. Boom, you're done. However, the con is that your foreground, I'll just say 4G, must be lit or it's dark. Now, I think I'm going to have to pull back into my book here in order to show you some examples of a dark foreground, as everything is saved on a separate computer, and I about pulled it in today before today. So there's an awesome shot. I love that Neil Zingle. Before today, but I had my kids, like I said earlier. So I have to scroll, and you have to watch me scroll, so forgive me there. But as I go through, S.M. Wilkes says, ordered Allen's book when first announced. Can't wait for its arrival. You know, there's like absolutely nothing that I necessarily need his book for, but I can't wait to read it from the beginning to the end. I'm stoked to learn what little bit of information that comes out really strong. Okay, here's a good example. In fact, let's kill my picture here. This is a pano, but with a single image kind of pro and con of not lighting my foreground. There's no extra exposure happening here to light my foreground. My foreground is what it is. The lighting of it is what it is. I'm going to have to go back way far, aren't I? Yep, okay. I have to go really far back to where I wasn't actually using low-level lighting. Might even have to share someone else's picture as an example if I come across one that isn't lit up or handled in a different way. Ooh, that's really cool. Latham, I think. I'll just keep going past, but great shot. I won't pull it up because I'm not sure what kind of exposure was done there. I can't speak to it being single. Oh, man, I did not think this would be so far back. All right. Going over Milky Way composition, and an example is going to be here. Oh, I lit everything, didn't I? I really, really did. Oh, what a bad example. Where's my past lake one? That's too bad. I am going to have a hard time finding my past lake one. Well, I thought that was going to be far more accessible. So I'm just going to force you to go through an epileptic seizure while I scroll through this again and get back to our techniques. With that foreground not being lit, you have to settle on enjoying what you have out of the image. For example, you may not do anything to light up the trees or the bushes or even any of the background, foreground, midground stuff. You're just going to let the light be it. And you get silhouettes, and that's a major con of single image. And the extra work of needing to bring in some low-level light panels like this one where you can turn it on. You know, let's see, this was set for 20% brightness right now, but I can go all the way down to, when this is technically 0.1, this is 0.1%, so 1% brightness, and you can see how this is much less light than if it goes up to 100%. So a low-level light LED panel like this can be quite beneficial, as you can see in images like These are all, this one's a good example of it. Using these low-level lighting, you can get a constant light on a subject, but then you have to do that work. So when you go out for a Milky Way shot one night, you might think for yourself, what do I want to do tonight? Am I going to light my foreground? Am I going to stay with a different exposure for my foreground? Once you start talking about doing a different exposure for your foreground, you've moved directly from single into blending. You're going to have to blend two images to create your shot. It's not just one shot. The other thing that's easy about single image Milky Way photography is that post-processing is simple. You can do it entirely just in Lightroom. Post-processing, simple. So you don't have to go into Photoshop and deal with layers. You don't have to do anything except just edit it and bring some contrast back in Lightroom. Keep it simple. Well, let's go into Panorama because I have more examples of panoramas there. So first off, here's a simple panorama that I've already showed so far. This panorama is a single image technique going from right to left. I started, let's see, I have this image easily somewhere. So before I show my screen again, I'm just going to pull it up, because you'll see every single photo that I've recently captured, and my kids and I have taken a ton of photos. So I'm just going to go here this way where you can't see anything. Oh, that's not in here. Bummer. Come on. You really don't have that in here? Maybe it's under my favorites. Here we go. Let's scat a few more tunes as you wait for me to pull up another image. I was not planning on needing this image anywhere else, but now all of a sudden I decided I want to draw on it. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and, oh, rats. Looks like I don't have this one saved on this computer. Wait, what a pain. Gadzooks. Okay, cancel that. We're not adding all those images. Let's get out of that and come back into here. So looking at the single image panorama, it's nothing much but going and connecting a shot over there towards off to the right of the core, a shot of the core, and going until I get 9 or 10 images across, depending on my focal length. A panorama Milky Way is also very easy. Panorama is not challenging to do. You just need to focus on getting your overlap. So a con of panorama is that you need to have something interesting, interest from right to left. And I'm just going to do that with LR. And what I'm trying to point out is that sometimes you can have a panorama that is just, cool and just automatically cool, and you love it. And sometimes a panorama is just a capture of a ton of space, a ton of activity, but doesn't have a same cohesive message. While I love this image where it has the Milky Way, a moon, and aurora, and it's in the Faroe Islands with Kathy and Rhonda, this one is a much stronger overall panorama image. It's so much stronger and more interesting to see because you have a cohesive continuity between what's shown and what's not shown. Sometimes a panorama will go far away from your Milky Way core because your Milky Way goes vertical, and you've got all this extra space off to the right and left, and it's just nothing quite like what you were hoping for. And so panorama has just a slight challenge where you need to make sure you have interest on the left as much as you have on the right so that it really complements the Milky Way. One other pro is that panoramas will bring back noise. And I say back because it doesn't clean up noise. It just kind of hides it in the background. By virtue of taking your image, for instance, let's look at this single image. There's tons of noise in this image, to be honest. Let me zoom in and really nitpick it. That looks like nothing over the live stream, but there's plenty of this kind of noise in this single frame. This is a good example. Oh, you know what? Let me zoom out like this. This is what I want. This is a good example because this is the same lens that I captured this with. And this lens vertical panel right here, this panel is like one of the panels that go into the panorama of this image. And so a single shot like this and then working my way to the left is just simply how it's captured. There's no more extra effort, and so therefore the noise should be the same. I should have the same noise in this image as I have in this image, but thanks to the panorama, it just doesn't really come out as it's been kind of pressed back into the background and less ignored, less focused on, thanks to being just a large image that now is making everything look better. When I say that it has pushes back noise, let me just say the word push in here. I never actually said push. Pushes back noise. It also pushes back focus issues. Now, if you're really off focus, like I just wrote the word focus poorly, if you're really out of focus, you will notice it. But when you look at, say, your corner stars in this one, and you see just the crazy coma, the trailing, a little aberration that happens with the color fringing that goes on there. Oh, there's some really bad ones, but they're behind my head. Those ones right there. They really kind of stand out in a single image. But when you're taking kind of this glorious golden center of the image and stitching it with a bunch of them, you end up cutting out those edges. Now this, I know I have, and I know it shouldn't be too far back. It's my panorama discussion talking about how you cut off all that worst part of the lens. Yeah, this is a good example right here. So when you look at this part of my panorama, this inside oval of blue is kind of the golden center, and then this section out here is still usable information that ends up being part of the stitch, and then this corner where it's orange, it's just flat out gone. It's just not being used as they're stitching and blending together in the panorama and fixing any of those issues that come up. And so if you have a lens that performs really great in the center, but you find that the coma aberration's a little bit more extreme, you do a panorama with that lens, you might find that it turns out really great and you're not bothered by it anymore like you once were, because you just kind of cut it off. And so it pushes back noise, it pushes back focus/issues. Now I mentioned earlier that you can add in any pros and cons that I'm not thinking of. Oh, a crackly noise, Aaron. Let me hear this, see if it's actually still happening. I've been touching my mic, and so maybe every time I touch my mic is doing it. Listening to a few, like 20 seconds ago, and it was fine. But Kathy says it's in and out, and so I'm not sure. I thought the noise was on my end. It's gone, though. I think it's going to be okay, but I will stop moving my mic so much. Perhaps I'm causing it with this, and so I'll just do that. All right, so panoramas, easy. If you have some gear that you know has some issues in the corners, do a panorama. Or if you want to try and make up for the scene not being shown in your focal length, do a panorama. It's not always easy to get the exact composition you want in the panorama when you don't go extreme right and extreme left. Sometimes you do a little like Brady Bunch. Oh, sorry, I scratched my mic. A Brady Bunch panorama, you know, where you got the Brady Bunch faces. This is a reference that won't be useful in another 10 years. It's barely useful now, honestly. That kind of Rubik's Cube panorama, that grid, it can look like I've added in all this composition and all this space to see more of my composition that I wanted, but you'll find out that in the top bottom, like the extreme top right corners and left corners and bottom corners, you'll find that you've caused such a weird twisting and changing of your compositional subjects. So if you have straight subjects and you go down angle or pull off to the right and left, you're going to have this be straight in some, curved this way in some, and curved this way in some. And when they all come together in the panel blend, it becomes weird. It can become weird unless you go into PT GUI and fix it really purposefully. If you just let Lightroom do it, sometimes it has no problem blending it and fixing it, and sometimes it'll blend in a way you just don't really like. And so it doesn't quite work as easy with just a Rubik's Cube pano. It's funny, that's an older reference than Brady Bunch. It's kind of the same age as Brady Bunch, but I think that will last longer. So these techniques, single images, very easy. Post-processing is simple. The foreground has to be lit though, or it's just going to be dark. Panorama, pros, it's easy as well. You can push back your noise. You can push back any focus issues because you're doing a panorama now. The cons are that the interest needs to be in there from left to right. You need to plan out a little bit more. And this isn't really much of a con. This is just a requirement of a panorama. But don't do that. I just want to get the tray back. Bring the tray. Bring me the tray. There we go. I got to bring this down a little bit. So this is just required of PANOS, but you will have to pay attention to overlap. You're going to make sure that you overlap well, and however you accomplish that, you can use my C3, my 3C3O method, third center, third off method, or you can use your ball head because you can actually shine a light on it and see the little markings because there's no one else around you, stuff like that. You got to pay attention to overlap, and man, I wrote that poorly because my iPad is floating a little bit and I don't have any space for my hand on that side. So now let's go into blend. We mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. People keep calling this a podcast. It's not a podcast. It's just a live stream on YouTube, but now I'm starting to call it a podcast. I mentioned at the beginning of the live stream that this blend method is, a term that I've accepted from Royce Bair. Ryan Luna, I don't know if you have disagreed with the term, but you enjoyed the euphemism. Brady Bunch is way older than Rubik's Cube, Kathy says. So I guess I brought it up a decade, with Rubik's Cube. Andy's here from Nevada. Awesome. Hey. And, okay, now I'm thinking of blending. Right. So what's a pro of a blend? And what is a blend? For instance, I was trying to find a good single image shot, and most of these images that I pulled up aren't single images like this. For instance, this one, actually, you know what? I think what I'll do, I can't, can I? Angle up, down, over, yep, over. Okay, that's Mary Beth's image. Right here is a blend. This isn't a single image. What happened here is that I needed to capture my rock with a longer exposure. So I didn't move my tripod. I captured the sky first. Why? Because the sky moves. The foreground doesn't. The sky gets clouds. The foreground doesn't. So don't do your foreground first when you're doing a blend. Focus on your sky, your Milky Way. Do that first. Okay, so now you're capturing your foreground after the fact and your Milky Way is long since moved or set. Not that you're waiting for blue hour or anything, but just it's time to do your foreground. And you haven't moved your tripod, it's a blend. If I had moved my tripod, it would be a composite. I composited my Milky Way from then and there. So more often than not, I will simply capture my sky. I love it. I think I got it where I want. Maybe I'll do like a time lapse real quick for 10 minutes so I have some variations of distance, how far from here to here is the core, stuff like that to choose from. And then I'll capture some longer exposures, 30 seconds, 1 minute, depending on the location and how much light is around it. So I'll go ahead and play around with the longer exposure on the foreground, and that becomes a blend. One of my images from 2016 that I absolutely love is a blend. My sky was a capture, and then I didn't move my tripod or change anything about my composition, and I had Brendan step out there and individually with a flashlight light every single rock. We used an expensive high CRI LED flashlight and captured the light right here, the light over here, and then he walked in front of this lit over here. So when he was standing here to light these rocks, I had to go in Photoshop and make sure I fix every element of how much of this curtain of shadow shows up still and how much of the light seen. I would tend to just kind of keep the highlights on the rocks that he was lighting up. I didn't change my focus either. I kept it at infinity, and it worked well enough because these rocks right here were at a good infinity point. They weren't so close to me that I had to focus stack, and just the craggliness and the character of the rocks makes it look more in focus, honestly, than it actually is. I mean, it's obviously soft. And look how soft it actually is. But when it's zoomed out, you don't know. Ha ha. So this is a blend where the sky is one exposure Settings were the same for the foreground, but I had to take 7 or 8 different images that I then blended together in a literal blend mode of lighten in Photoshop. So I want to show another blend because this is one I don't show often, and this is an image I haven't shown off very recently. This is a blend. In fact, this became a composite because I broke one rule, and I've never done it since. Let's see if anyone can guess what that one rule is that I've never broken since, that I broke in this image that makes it a composite. But speaking of blend techniques first, the foreground itself was lit with multiple different moments with that same flashlight. My high CRI LED flashlight that now is just lights my pathway. I never use it in my photography because I'm so in love with the low level lighting or natural lighting and long exposures. So then this shot is a foreground with different lighting blends together and then one sky shot. And that's it. However, I did do 2 shots pano to go a little higher on my sky. So I panoed up and only kept 1 frame here. I did focus stack for this bush right here in the foreground. When you zoom in on this bush, you can see that it's in decent focus. I have never gotten these cracks and these craggly cracks to show up. They are so cool. In this area near Goshen, it just has been water filled ever since, despite the fact that there's a drought. So I don't know if the farmer has been redirecting water into this wash area kind of to hold up water longer or what, but I have not seen this dry, and I haven't checked now in August. I should check and see if I can get back out there and do this location because I miss it. Really deep, really great character-filled cracks. You know, maybe even contend with some of the great shots over on the Guild of Hudson. Hudson has some great images. Vic, do not need to apologize for being late. No worries, man. Welcome in. So no one has written yet their guess as to what rule I broke, but I'm sure that's all coming in here in a few more seconds of delay. Kathy says Hollywood Squares shows your age. And yes, I do remember it. I didn't say Hollywood Squares. Did someone else say Hollywood Squares? Because I know I didn't. I said Rubik's Cube. If I said Hollywood Squares, that would show my age. And that show didn't even come out when I was a kid. It was replays and 10, 20-year-old reruns when I saw it. And I only, I guess, show my age by recognizing the reference. So, if no one's guessing, I'm going to give a few more seconds left. In this situation, I did have to break a rule to make my final composition just exactly what I wanted because I was late to capturing the sky. Awesome. There's a message that Ryan has sent me that's being held for review. So Ryan, it's between you and me. I'll keep that. I know what you said, man. Victor says I bullseyed the composition. Well, it's a bit wrong. I wish I hadn't lost the hard drive of my 2016 images because this is lost to time. I could show you the process in it through my videos over on YouTube. In fact, many of you who are here today do subscribe to my channel, but you may not have even seen some of my older videos that are little, cool adventures, and they teach things about Milky Way photography off and on. Oh, you know what? Let's go down to Photog Adventures, and you will see, oh, that doesn't show all of them. Let me just go to all videos and sort by oldest, and you'll see the video. It's right here. This one will let you see how the techniques worked with Brendan. I'll let the ad run for a second. And this one is the Dry Pond Milky Way. So if you ever want to catch up on some of my old adventures, you should go to the channel and check them out, hanging out with Brendan back then. So then when he was lighting my image, I don't show him. I don't have a video of him doing it. But I believe when I show off the image at the very end, I show the different frames of all of it. Let's find out. Let's find out together while I wait to see if someone guesses what I did wrong. All right. Bum, bum, bum. Joe Harvey says, you sort of remind me of Paul Lynn. Oh, Paul Lynn. I don't know who Paul Lynn is. Is he a host of like Hollywood Squares or something? Hey, Kathy guessed it. You moved the sky. So here's the frame of my sky. And then here's a frame with some of the light, some more light, another frame with other light, and a plane comes through, and then Brendan comes in, and then another light, and then they can start to see where Brendan's standing and lighting up that side, and I blended all of those together with the light and blend mode to make them come into this final composition. So that was a Milky Way time-lapse goosenecks in Goblin Valley video, and there's the dry pond, and you can see in my frame here that Kathy was absolutely right. So here we go. Jerry Thompson says, darn autocorrect, cracks are north. Milky Way captured from a different location. Cracks are north, Milky Way south. No, I didn't go that crazy, Jerry. You can see how this is the raw frame right here. This isn't even changed. So this is facing directly west-southwest for I think it's like October or September Milky Way. And there we go. You can see how I have the Milky Way. I'm blending in my foreground now. And you'll watch as the framing of the Milky Way changes so slightly in the final capture. This is everything perfectly true. And then I did this. Come on. Boom. Do you see it? It's just a slight tweaking of the angle. I changed the angle of the Milky Way in my final composition because I liked it more totally straight up and down. So my cheating was I took my sky and bent it from here to here. I didn't look north and bring a Milky Way from the south in. I'm not that heinous. That is complete lying, and I hate that crap. But I did make my Milky Way that was kind of bent, like in my composition. I don't know, maybe it was just that time of season. It was just already tilted just enough. Because I don't know, I was capturing immediately after Astro Twilight. So I probably just preferred it tipped a little bit more to the left. As you can see, the pano exists in the full frame here. And so, yeah. And, you know, if there was Roger Clark here, you know what he would say? That is way too blue. In fact, this is the very image I shared and got my butt handed to me by Roger Clark. He said that, look at this great red air glow that you ruined with your blue color. All right, I'm sorry. Sorry, sir. He was very angry. Well, okay, he was very much his normal self, probably, to be honest. Okay, cool. So let me read some text here. Lonnie says hello. Hey, Lonnie. And Kathy says Paul Lynn was Uncle Arthur on Bewitched. I am reminding you of Paul Lynn. Was Uncle Arthur a good-looking, awesome guy? Because I hope so. That would be terrific. So this is a blend. So we're talking about the pros and cons of a blend, as I spent a lot of time explaining the creation of those two images. The blend is not easy. It's not. Just because not easy. And man, I am taking my handwriting to another level right now. It's not easy because you must plan what you're going, what you must do with that blend. Kathy says he would hate my blue skies. This blend scenario, for instance, lighting, that's much easier to plan. I know that I want to light all my rocks. So when I bring in this image, I'm going to make sure I've lit up all the rock faces well enough. Now, I don't really know if it's going to look good, but I think it looked good on location, and then I take it home and hope. And so that's a little bit of a caveat to blends, is that may not work out. I'll say work as intended. I'm really afraid to move my mic. I think I need to upgrade my mic. Get a little better boom. This is my more expensive boom and really expensive mic, and yet I still feel like I'm not perfect on the audio. So did I just write intrepid? I had a film studio in high school that I called Intrepid Productions. And so when I went to write intended, my habit was to write intrepid once I wrote INT, and I just continued writing intrepid. Will not work as intended because, that didn't quite go as planned. I had to blend and it didn't quite work. What's another example of a blend? This one right here. This is a blend. Why? Because I took a pano of the sky and then took a pano of the foreground and I changed settings. It's not just a true pano with two rows. For instance, this. This, without Brendan and I, is just a pano. There's nothing special about it. But because I took a single frame at the very end after the panel row number 1, row number 2, and then captured one with us standing out there, it became a blend. Like I mentioned in the beginning, like you go out with your light and you shine it out in the sky, or you get your silhouette on a rock face. Alan Wallace loves blends. He will always add himself at the end. In fact, I've got some behind the scene footage of him changing his silhouette. He's like, I like this one, let me try that one. So when you see like his final image from Olmsted Point, you can see how he went through like 6-7 iterations trying to have like the perfect look, and it was kind of fun to be a part of the behind the scenes there on that kind of stuff, because us YouTubers, we can be so vain, like must be perfect. Not necessarily for good looks like vain, because Alan's not a vain guy, he's an awesome guy. I just mean that like we try to make it look so good. We worry about that all the time. So Brendan and I took like 7 or 8 different tries to get this right, and then we got it and we enjoyed it, and I blended ourselves in there. It's not from the pano. As I took the pano, I'm behind the camera, so this is an obvious blend. But you take us out, and the pano is just a pano. There's one row here at those settings and another row at the same settings. There's nothing changed. The only reason why this becomes a blend is because there's a sky difference and a foreground difference. There's 2 different exposures that I literally have to blend together to look real. And with all that extra Photoshop work, which is a good con, I mean, it's definitely a beneficial. So, sorry, I got to do this. Extra Photoshop work. Because when you're dealing with the blend, you got layers, and you may need to make them look natural. And if we're talking purism here, you start making some changes to your image to make it look more natural, you're dealing with a little bit of challenge. Oh, audio is good, Vic says. Awesome, cool. You've got that extra art element added that wasn't in your raws just to make it look natural. Holy goodness. I'm thinking this is going to be a very short Milky Way Wednesday. I'm already at 7:40. Yeesh. Oh well. I haven't gotten to the secret one, the secret new coined term that we're going to decide today, and I hope Ryan Luna's still here because I could use his help on this. Jeff Lloyd says, all you can do is hope for the best sometimes on these blends. It's just I'm going to do my lighting like this and hope it works. I'm going to go ahead and take this exposure. It looks right on my camera. I think it'll blend well. Sometimes it doesn't blend well. For instance, my famous terrible Crater Lake picture, as I tried the exact same technique of blending on Crater Lake. So here's this blend. Looks pretty dang good. Really love it. It turned out really, really well. Same exact techniques. Okay, I think I've got some. Oh, maybe there's no images on that frame, and that's why they weren't loaded yet. Scroll, scroll, scroll. It's not Milky Way Wednesday unless you see me scrolling for images. So welcome into a traditional Milky Way Wednesday. Oh my gosh, I thought this was closer. There we go. This is what I've tried. Okay, blending a foreground with a sky, and this is my foreground at 1 minute. It was way too bright. So I tried Blue Hour, and I'm like, ugh, I don't really like the Blue Hour one either because it's still too bright, has more detail. It could look natural, but not any good. I don't think, like here's my sky that would go in with those other ones. You can see how already they're just too different. I don't think I have an example here. But I believe over here on the Milky Way Photographers Guild, I included it in my, yep, there we go. There's my lesson in it for the Nightscaper conference, and look at how well it blends together. It doesn't blend well at all. It looks horrible. The Blue Hour plus the sky. And if I had shown maybe the example with the 1 minute nighttime shot, it would have a much better tonal connection. The tones of this really blends well with the tones of this upper part, but it just, the blend, it may not always work, as we were talking. Epilepsy time. Sorry. All right. The blend, the pro. Okay. Because I wrote easy up here, I wrote that in the pro, but that is definitely not a pro about blends. Not easy. Let's put this underneath the cons. But there are pros to blends. There's our major pros. You can make it work. Bring out foreground better. When I say make it work, I mean For instance, you've got a star track sky and you're trying to capture it plus the foreground. The foreground's moving on you in your track sky, and you got a fuzzy, blurry, like middle area between your sky meeting the foreground. And where that sky meets the foreground, it's all blurry, and you need to make it work. Make it work with your foreground shot. You got a foreground shot that's nice and still, and with the blend, you can make your foreground show up and be awesome and bring out that foreground and still do a tracked sky. So you have to do that blend. It's really beneficial to do a blend. In fact, I love this image. I needed a blend. What else do I have as an example for my blend magic? Oh, nothing else. I've already shown everything. Cool. So while this looks good, I have a lot of empty foreground that's not very detailed. This is much more detailed from corner to corner, edge to edge, because I blended a different exposure setting instead of having a giant, huge section of my image that's just black. And so this is a cool pano, but the other one's a better pano. And so blending is a cool technique that you're going to use. All right, before we run out of time, because I am blabbing on, number 4. We need to talk about number 4. And I feel that, to my honor, I can't be too heavy-handed on that. I can't be too heavy-handed because I have friends that use this technique, and I don't hate them for it. And I don't hate the technique, but I just... Vic says you crop it in and fix that panel, Well, the thing is I really like the balance of the negative to positive space. In fact, it's my example of how negative to positive space balance sometimes can be dictated to you by your image. And you find out later, like, this is actually good. This is a lot of negative space, but it's actually quite balanced. Anyway, I have been working, Chris Whiting says, on overshooting for foreground blends, and I throw out the rest. I don't always make it. Yeah, it's really hard to try and guess that correct value to give your foreground exposure. Sometimes you'll go for a foreground exposure that is just brutally high, and it just looks noisier and not good. Or you can go for a foreground exposure and it'll end up being a foreground. I'm kind of mystified because all of a sudden I went from the 38 viewers to 21. It's like 17 people just dropped, and I wondered if I was having a tech issue. But as far as YouTube says, I'm good. Oh, wait, now it says there's 38 people again. That's crazy. Okay, that was just a YouTube glitch. Okay, good. It made me worry that something on my tech side was disconnecting. All right, cool. So let's just go straight into number 4 because I lost my train of thought. This technique, let's just talk about its pros and cons before we name it. Pro: can fix bad weather. Can't fit it. All right, there. Got it, kind of. Another pro is that you can track from car. I know, right? This is why I don't want to be too heavy-handed on how I judge people who use this, because I don't hate them for using it. I don't want to make fun of the technique. I don't want to mock the technique because I get it. I mean, Rob and I were talking about this for a while. I totally get it. I think we need an entire episode dedicated to this technique. The pros and cons, the breakdown, the examples. I need to give some examples of doing it and not doing it. I've never done it. I don't want to do it. But I have friends I respect that do it. Another pro is that you can make your job easier in Photoshop. I haven't told you what I'm doing yet, so I won't say with my next sentence. It almost came out of my mouth. Job easier in Photoshop. The con. Well, the con is that Aaron King mocks it. Okay, I don't want to mock it. Aaron King bemoans. I use bemoan a lot. Bemoan. You'll get Aaron King to bemoan your photography. Blake Fair. I love Blake's shot, though. Hey, hello, son. My dad's here, everybody. You are doing great. I love your webcast. Is that what this is called? It's not a webcast or a podcast. It's just a live stream. It's a live stream on YouTube. So, hey, Dad. Do I have any pictures of my dad? I can show an old classic family photo. Let me go ahead and go to this cam chat so I can show, so you can see my dad's giant neck. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm going to bring up your neck first thing when I introduce you to everybody. If you go to an old podcast where we interview the Italian photographer, oh, I can't remember his name right now. How do I forget his name? Because I'm on the spot because the light are showing. That's why I can't remember his name. But he actually joined me on that episode because he helped me speak Italian whenever we needed to with the Italian photographer. So I'm just going to go to a little Aaron King's life. Where are you? I have a saved album. Oh, these are shared albums. That's the problem. I don't need the shared albums. Where's my other albums? There we go. Cool. There's Aaron King's Youth. And I guess I'll share this. Why not? You guys can see this. Aaron King's Youth. Me with hair. Me with Gene Bunton. Me out on the mission, serving as a missionary in the Netherlands. This is Kerkvervelan, and my first city was Oegstgeest. You have to really be committed to the Dutch when you want to say Oegstgeest. Here's Aaron King. Here's Intrepid Productions, by the way. See a similarity in the logos by chance? Yeah, Intrepid Productions. Anyhow, my dad, my family picture. Where is it? Oh, it's not in here. I could have sworn it was in here. Maybe it's in my favorites, and I got to go back here because in my favorites there's all sorts of stuff. But hey, Dad, thanks for saying hi. Definitely got me to say squirrel and focus on something else, but I don't care. It's fun. I think it'll be saved at the top, right? Old family photos. I've recently shared this photo. I think it's because I saved it off of my Dropbox, and that's why it's not where I expect it. Thought this was going to be easier to find, Dad, just like all my other pictures that I've been trying to find every single live stream. Man, just when I thought I gathered all these photos here, I'm set. I still didn't gather enough. Of course, I never would have anticipated needing to share a picture of my dad. Oh well, there's my dad, everybody. Welcome to the show, Dad. All right, let's get back in here and let's name one more con on this final tech. Enrique Fossati. Okay, thank you, Kathy. Thank you. Okay, so this fourth technique, there's another con to it. And the con, oh man, because of what it is, there's not a lot of cons because you're taking some liberties with this technique. And so it eliminates cons. I mean, I guess you have to know Photoshop, but that's not really a con. That's just a requirement. All the cons we've talked about so far are about your foreground not being as seen, or you have to pay attention to the technique and the overlap. But you don't have to worry about overlap in this technique. All you have to do is just get it right. And honestly, I bet some of them out there who use this technique aren't as careful as the ones I respect. The ones I respect, like, I won't say their names. Okay, I almost said some names because I don't think he wants me to reveal that he uses this technique. All right, so, this technique. Hey, Papa King, Chris Whiting says. Awesome. Enrico. Yeah. So, I think we can call this drop-in or drop. There's single technique, Panorama Milky Way, blend Milky Way, drop Milky Way. But help me with the name because I was trying to think of it all day today. It's not something I want to use a mocking term. It's not cheating. It's just taking advantage of the fact that, like Ryan Luna pointed out earlier, it's a euphemism saying blend versus composite. This is technically a composite, absolutely, but I want to give it more credit than composite because if they do it correctly and fairly, they're doing it in a way that I can respect. And so I am going to call it drop Milky Way for now. Oh, you dropped that Milky Way in? You drop the Milky Way in. You drop in. Because if you use this technique, you literally capture your foreground in the blue hour or at any point that you capture the foreground that you can, and you drop in your Milky Way. You grab your Milky Way from the car. You go back to the car, get your tracker out, plug it in, and run it, and you drop in your Milky Way. I want to emphasize that if you use this, I am not trying to mock it. And I'm trying not to, but I'm still managing to make it sound like it's cheating. It's not cheating. I'm very much on the fence on how to handle this because there's so much about it that I feel like, but I would never do that because. And my becauses are, I like the idea that when I got there and I showed up at Hoodoo Village with John and we captured this image, that the technique worked because everything came together. There weren't clouds. I didn't drop in a Milky Way from a night before because there were clouds. But I live in Utah, and I live out here in this area. It is sky replacement. But sky replacement, at least this one I feel like has a little bit more technique to it, a little bit more stress. Because let me just mention it specifically. So you go to a location out in the middle of the Utah desert, and you go there for your very first time, and you've been out here from very far travels, and you won't be back for years, if not maybe ever. And you have a cloudy night, but your first night when you're out, there's a good Milky Way. And so what you do is you capture a clean Milky Way, a Milky Way that doesn't have a lot of distractions. So, for instance, let me just pull in a Milky Way over here before I do anything. I think I can get one off of this image. Yeah, let's do this one. Let's add this. Oh, it's too big of an image. It's taking forever to add. Come on, astrophotography. Top 10? No, because that won't be in there. It's got to be in the composition one. Oh, look, I did have it on here. There's that one example. I knew I had it here. What a fool. Couldn't think of that on the spot. But let me get to where I'm trying to get to. Oh, here it is. It loaded. Okay. All right. I'm going to load it up here in a crop way so we just see it like this. Yeah, let's just do that. Oh, boy. Why is it so out of focus? Oh, there it goes. Whew. I thought I had to get another image. I'm not showing you this yet, but I was worried that I'd have to get another image because this was so out of focus. Okay, we're good now. We are good. Whew, showing you the screen. So, what you do is you get a Milky Way that's completely free of all distractions. You don't have any trees and rocks or anything even close to your core. You just have a nice, clean Milky Way. Now, this is a little cut off because it's technically just the Crater Lake image, and I got some trees showing up on the side here, but imagine this was your clean image. Right there, nothing else to worry about. Oh, my iPad moved. Oh, no, don't go and resize on me. You're such a pain, Windows. Okay, so you get this clean Milky Way image on your first night of your trip, and then on the other nights when you have bad weather, you can at least replace it. Now, what I'm trying to say is I give them a little credit. Ignore the fact there's a Milky Way on this image. You're standing on the Earth, and over here is the Milky Way in this season. Or over here in the east, southeast, is the Milky Way, right? And you've got the core of the Milky Way going up. Well, you capture that Milky Way at the correct angle and your foreground. The thing that I believe most, if not all, and let's just pretend like most is true because I think that's more than fair, they are not going somewhere and capturing something this direction and then pulling in a Milky Way from that direction. They're not pulling some 355 lie. And I say that because it looks like a clock now. This would be horrifying to me. That is sky replacement. That is compositing. That's terrible. But a drop-in Milky Way is capturing a subject at this angle and capturing your sky at that angle. Someone in my mind that I'm thinking of that used this technique nearby me in Escalante. And at Escalante, we were capturing a Milky Way and looking pretty directly south. And I captured my Milky Way, and all of a sudden, he went up and kind of wandered up the hill a little bit so he can get higher. and then captured it looking south as well. Now, he was mostly looking back this way and this way. It was kind of this whole frame of this space, just kind of this angle, to try and capture what was the sky from the spot, 50 yards down here. He did move. He didn't blend. He had to move. Now, when you do a star tracker, you just have to have a blend. There's just nothing else you can do unless you leave your fuzzy foreground because you're such a purist. So he left his tripod's position and moved and caused it to be a composite, but it's not a composite, because if I told someone that he composited in his Milky Way, they think he faked it. But they didn't fake it. It's just a drop-in. So let's go into the chat and talk about this a little bit. So Ryan says, LOL, I'm the king of drop-in, but I do it from the same outing. Out of spite, I will call it composite. He has spite, so he wants to call it compositing, but he's the king of drop-in. Now, I know Ryan had quoted doing this at his moment out in Joshua Tree. So he went there, got his Joshua Tree foreground, and then went off to the side and got it. But he gets it from that same location, which is where I can respect this technique, and I want it to not be compositing because it makes it sound way worse than it actually was. If someone finds out that you're in the Utah desert over here, and then you go 20 feet over here and capture a Milky Way later, and you have a Milky Way that night that you really did see, you're not compositing. You're not exactly taking a really neat rock, and saying, this cool rock is over here facing north, like Jerry suggested. Maybe I broke that rule. And then capturing it in a cool way and then bringing that Milky Way, right over it. Or having a cool, a peak point that you bring a Milky Way directly on top of that is only ever over here and never right behind it at that angle. And so when you composite and change the position of the Milky Way on a subject, that's compositing. I hate that. I will mock that. And it frustrates me when people get Instagram following for doing that, because they do all the time. But if you drop it in like Ryan Luna, I'm not going to bring Ryan as like a reference. Sorry, Ryan, I'm going to mention you now a bunch of times. If you drop it in like Ryan and you do it from the same location, it just has more verifiable truth to the example image. He just cut out some elements. You're cutting out some of the issues that you're having in the foreground. A delayed blend is an interesting thought. A delayed blend. Now, I am delaying my timing, so I think delay doesn't work, because the delay is happening in my blends too. In fact, my goosenecks picture, which I won't even try to go find right now, that one was taken 15 hours later in the middle of the day. And so that's a definite blend, and it's a different time of day, but I never move my tripod. Thomas says, I do this on the same outing and shoot in the same direction to give the true location. Look, we see, I'm finding this out. So many of you do this, and I refuse to do this technique. I really got to dedicate an entire episode to just this. I think I've covered it plenty. It's 8 o'clock already. But the drop-in, or as something else we can call, Henry can help us out. Honestly, we don't need more terms for composite. We already have focal length blend, blue hour blends, etc. I get that, but do we call it all composite, though? Because if you call it all composite, people who already misunderstand Photoshop think that when you say that's been Photoshopped for post-processing, that you have now faked it. And I don't want something that's so synonymous with fake. It's not fake necessarily. It's just blended. Or it's just dropped in. Oh man, it's kind of faked though. See, I'm so on the fence on this. I gotta talk about it. I'm gonna do a round table with people who do this, and we're gonna go over it. I'm gonna bring in Eric Benedetti. Wow, I really fumbled his name. I'm going to bring in Eric Benedetti for my side of the argument, bring in Royce Bear, and then maybe bring in a couple other people who do the technique and see what's going on. My concurrent viewers just dropped like 12 again and came right back. That's weird. I wonder what's happening there. Laurentiu says, I've done this a couple times. So now we're having like a little bit of a self-help session where we're all kind of admitting, hi, I'm Laurentiu, and I do drop in Milky Ways. And so I guess we're not alone in this world, or you aren't alone, because I have never done it. I don't have an example once of showing this. Chris says, I don't do it, but don't have an issue with those that do. That's my problem, Chris, is that I don't have an issue with drop-in. When you composite and you fake it and you change it and you perfect it and you put your composition anyway, like I don't have a problem with it outside of one thing. It's that part where the trees or the foreground subject just line up so brilliantly. Like this image right here, you might be able to lambaste me for saying I took a time lapse with Henry when we're hanging out here, and I'm waiting for it to get to this vertical point and use this frame for my sky and then blend it in my foreground. Never move my tripod. But I did wait for the perfect moment. But it was taken precisely from the direction and angle that the rock would look like this and the Milky Way would look like that. If I had walked up to the hill over here and captured it and then came back down and captured this rock from a different angle where it's like, I like the way it shapes this way at this, this azimuth around it. Okay, that direct head-on view looks less cool than this view, but now that view looks more south or looks more completely east, but I like the rock, and then I bring the Milky Way in. I hate that. It has to be true. Basically, I think it's going to come down to me that if you can't go on Photo Pills or Planet and show me that this Milky Way is possible, exactly how you've lined it up, then I don't like it. But I don't have a problem with you doing it. I get it, especially for the person traveling to Utah or cool locations for the first time and maybe last time, and they just want to get out of 4 nights. They had one good night, and they've used that Milky Way from that one good night for all the other nights. I get it. I get why you would do it. I get it. I time blend all the time, Chris Whiting says. Yeah, me too. Totally, I have to. I think that's okay. Ron S. says, it's art in the eye of the photographer. To be honest, how you make it when posting. I agree. It's art, and it's always in the eye of the photographer. It's their art and their artistic impression of like how the color looks, whether the color looks like this or the color looks like this. Roger Clark slapped my wrist 18 times. That is in the artistic expression, and yet just be honest when you post it. Agree with Ron. Be honest when you post it. That is the only way to gain my respect, is if you're honest. And Blake Fair was honest. He dropped it in, that Mono Lake shot. Oh my gosh. Thomas says, when I use a barn for a foreground, I'll set up and shoot the Milky Way from behind the barn and then move to the front of the foreground shot. I do 2-minute plus tracked Milky Way shot. So you're dropping Thomas Turner, huh? All right, man. Okay, so that's totally fine. And that technique is, I'm going to start settling in that can be okay. I can't go as far as calling everything composite because I'm a man who loves languages, and I don't mind that there's nuanced definitions with different words for those different nuanced versions of the technique. I know that Henry's right, that we have a ton of different versions, like a blue hour blend, a focal length blend, a time blend, exposure blend, all sorts of ways of saying that you've composited. So I get Henry's argument too. All right, we got to do this round table someday talking about the drop-in Milky Way and see what everyone thinks. And you know what? What Royce says goes. No, we'll see what Roy says. I'm sure he'll enjoy being a part of that round table. We'll see how heated it can get. If I got myself, Eric, and Royce, I'll have to bring in 3 people who are fans of this, and they can argue it well. Okay, so these techniques are simple techniques that you need to consider before you go out. Am I going to do a single image only tonight? Okay, I need to bring my light if I want to see the subject, or the subject won't work. It's too big. It's too vast. I'm not going to need my light. Boom. You make that consideration before you go. I'm going to do a panorama. I'm definitely going to need a consistent light. I can't go around using flashlight in each individual panorama frame. So I want low-level lighting if I light at all. And so the panorama is typically a large vista, and you hardly ever, if ever, do a panorama lit. It's interesting, though. You capture a panorama like this, and without that light, everything here would just be completely black. Without light at all, this panorama is completely lit. It is 1 minute, though. This exposure was just the moon was out, and it lit everything for me. And so when you think about sometimes that panorama and the way it takes in more information, sometimes you can really bring out your foreground, where if it was just a single frame, I'll pull that image up that I realized I do have. When you realize that one frame is in there, it's like, oh gosh, this is just not strong enough, and it could be way better. Like this image right here. Oh, I just have to kill this, and kill that, and kill that, and kill that. This is an area. I almost blew the secret. This is an area. Now, no one's going to be fighting to know the secret because it's not that special looking. But it's just one of the lakes that are, really still. And it's loved for that, and that you can get a nice still lake more often than not. And this is a capture I did in 2016 when I'm still learning. This is a lower exposed shot. I don't love the composition, but it's something. But this is an example of how in a single shot, you either light your foreground or you don't. And if you don't, you just got silhouettes. And so over here, considering all of these, I need to mention blend and drop in. No, I'm kidding. I said so many things about blend and drop in. We got that. We covered it. Boom. 3 photographers, 3 different opinions. Victor says, well, yeah, it's not going to be any surprise when everyone just disagrees. Phoenix says, awesomeness, great shots. Well, thank you for saying that. That was my example of a bad image, but cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Bob says, combination blend. Combo blend instead of drop in. You're combining moments and locations. A geo blend. I don't know. Do we know the term for blend? I like drop in. We'll have to figure out. Maybe that round table will come with a final term that everyone's happy about. But I like what you're thinking, Bob. The blend, the combination blend got me thinking geo blend. Royce Bear Lake. Yep, that's the name of the lake. Royce Bear Lake. Voldemort Lake. The name that we shall not be named. It's nothing special. I've mentioned it before. You can go back and watch the podcast. I mentioned in the podcast. I think I mentioned everyone's comments. I haven't missed anything, so let's just go ahead and call it. I need dinner. You might need dinner. You might need to go out and do something else. So just say thanks so much for joining me for another Milky Way Wednesday. Last week was extremely long. Those of you who hung out for 2 hours, thank you so much. I'm Aaron King with Photog Adventures. I'll be back for more Milky Way Wednesdays, and we'll see if I can get the gear to make this background even better. Hopefully the lighting was strong, and I feel like my fill light might be a little too much. I don't know. Let's figure out if I can get a great look and perfect some of these things. All right. Thank you all for being with me tonight. Have a good one, and I'll see you in 2 Wednesdays. Not next Wednesday, in 2 Wednesdays. I'll be back August 31st for part 2 of the techniques. All right. Cool. Have a good night.